Continuing with our lecture, we're going to be learning how to create random values within a range. Now in MATLAB we have two options to generate random values, rand and randi. First, we're going to be focusing with the use of rand. Every time that you're using rand, you're always going to be generating a floating number within 0 and 1, but it does not include 0 or 1. So what does it mean is every single time that you use rand in MATLAB, you're always going to obtain a value within 0 and 1, but that value is never 0 or 1. It's always within the range. It can get very close to 0, it can get very close to 1, but it's never going to be exactly 0 or exactly 1. Now, this might not seem as useful, but there is a way that we can tweak in MATLAB so that we can obtain any range of our preference. For example, we are trying to create a random value between 0 and 5 that it does not include 0 nor 5. The only way to achieve so is to make an additional operation with the rand. So as always, rand is going to be between 0 and 1, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to multiply it times a number so that the highest possible value out of this operation is going to be 5. So the highest possible value out of rand is very close to 1 or 1. So what number do I need to multiply times 1 so that I can obtain 5? My regular basics, 5 times 1 is going to be 5. So let's check it out. Out of this whole operation, the lowest possible value out of rand is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. So I'm meeting the criteria of the bottom range. Now the highest possible value out of rand is very close to 1. So 1 times 5 is 5. So I'm meeting the criteria for the highest possible value in my range. Testing it out, and you guys get to see that we are obtaining numbers within 0 and 5, but none of those numbers are exactly 0 or exactly 5. Now, what happens if the bottom of my range is not 0? In this case, I'm trying to generate a random number between 7 and 15. How does it work? If we try to follow the exact same example as before, rand times 15, the random generated value is going to be between 0 and 15. So it seems that just like this, in the way as it is not going to work. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to reanalyze the operation that I need to perform. The lowest possible value out of rand is very close to 0. It's not meeting the criteria of my bottom range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to that 0 what number in order to meet the criteria. 0 plus 7 is going to give me the bottom range, which is meeting the criteria. The lowest possible value out of this combination is very close to 7, so I'm in business. And the highest possible value out of this combination so far is going to be 1 plus 7, 8. So I'm not meeting the criteria just yet on the highest possible value on my range. So it seems that I need to use the same analysis as the previous example and do a multiplication. But what do I need to multiply rand so that the highest possible value out of this whole operation is 15? Maybe you're going to be feeling tempted to multiply 15. But let's analyze this for a second. Lowest possible value out of this operation is 0 plus 7 is still 7. I'm in business. Highest possible value out of this combination is very close to 15. So 15 plus 7 is 22. So I'm not meeting the criteria on the highest possible value. So what number do I need to multiply rand so that the highest possible value out of this whole operation is 15? Well, 7 plus 8 is going to give you 15. Or another way to put it, the number that you need to multiply times rand is going to be the highest possible value of your range minus the lowest possible value of your range. 15 minus 7 or 8. Let's test it out. And once again, you are obtaining random values between 7 and 15 without including the 7 or the 15. Alright, so now that we know the use of rand, now we get to see that we are capable to generate any random floating number within the range of our preference. And we are capable to generate decimals with the use of rand. But chances are that you might not need to generate a decimal number randomly. Chances are that most of the times you're going to be generating an integer. And if you need to generate a random integer, we are going to be using round_i. For round_i, you are going to be capable of generating a random number between 1 and any value that you specify within parentheses. For example, if you're trying to generate a number between 1 and 5, the only thing that you need to specify is going to be round_i 5. Round_i is always going to generate a random value between 1 and 5 because that's the value that I'm specifying in parentheses. Testing it out, you get to see that I'm generating values between 1 and 5. And the most important part and the biggest difference between round and round_i is that it does include the boundaries that you need to specify. So you will obtain 1 and 5 as well within the random generation. Now, what happens if the beginning of my range is not 1? What happens if we try to generate a random value between 7 and 15? Using the same analysis and the same operations that we did with round, I'm going to add to my operation a number and I'm going to specify a number within parentheses. Now, let's analyze. The lowest possible value out of round_i is always going to be 1. So what do I need to add to 1 so that I can obtain the lowest value on my range? 1 plus 6 is going to give you the lowest possible value of your range, which is 7. Now, what do we need to specify within parentheses? What is the highest possible value out of this command so that if I add 6, I'm going to obtain 15, the top of my range. So basically, the top of your range minus the 6 that you're adding outside is going to give you the highest possible value of your range. Testing it out, and you guys get to see that the random generated values that we generate are going to be between 7 and 15, including the 7 and including the 15 as well. Now, let's try to see a third example. What happened that if the beginning of my range, instead of being 1 or any positive integer, is going to be 0? In this case, we are trying to generate a random value between 0 and 15. Using the same analysis as before, maybe you are going to be feeling tempted to create a round_i 15, and this is going to meet the criteria with the highest possible value, 15. But the lowest value out of this combination is going to be 1. So how is that we can change it? The lowest possible value out of round_i 15 is 1. But if I need 0, I just need to subtract 1. Lowest possible value 1 minus 1 is 0, meeting the criteria on the low range. How about the high range? Highest possible value out of round_i 15 is 15. Minus 1, 14. So it seems that we are not meeting the criteria up here. So instead of just stating 15, how about if we decided to add 1 in here? So round_i 16, the highest possible value is 16 minus 1, 15. We're in business. So pressing the semicolon to test it out. And you guys get to see that I'm capable to generate random integers between 0 and 15, including those two values. So now that we know how to use round and round_i, let's try to see how is that we can make it and use it in an applicable exercise. So using the exact same example that we were using previously, the exercise where you had to input the temperature, the humidity percentage, and the wind speed in order to calculate how much is the real temperature that you will be feeling under these conditions. How about that instead of having these three parameters as inputs, I'm going to generate random values instead. So getting rid of the inputs in here, the random values that I'm going to generate for these three parameters are not going to be within any random range. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to today's forecast, and in the case of the temperature for today, I get to see that it's forecasting a lowest of 76 and a highest of 88. So my temperature is going to have a range. It's going to be a random number between 76 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so once again, I'm going to be generating an integer in this case. What do I need to add to the round I? Is going to be 76 minus 1, so 75. Because once again, the lowest possible value here is 1 plus 75, 76, which is the minimum on my range. And what is going to be specified within parentheses is going to be the upper portion of your range minus whatever you're adding outside of round I. So round I 88 minus 75 is going to generate 13 as the highest possible value. 13 plus 75 is 88. Sounds like we're in business. In the case of the humidity percentage, I cannot go to the overview. I need to go to the detailed version of the forecast for today. We get to see that for today, we are giving a humidity percentage hour per hour. And we get to see that the humidity is going to range with 74 as the lowest and is going to get a maximum of 92%. So that's going to be my range for the humidity. The humidity is going to be a random integer between 74 and 92. 74 to 92, and it's going to be in the form of percent. So using the exact same command, round I, parentheses, addition, semicolon. Once again, outside of round I is going to be 73, and in parentheses is going to be the upper portion of my range minus whatever I'm adding outside of round I. Let's see. Lowest possible value here is 1. 1 plus 73 is 74, meeting the criteria on the lower end. Highest possible combination in here is going to be 19. 19 plus 73 is 92, meeting the criteria on the upper end. Last but not least, the wind speed. For the wind speed, I'm going to go to the overview where we are giving wind. We get to see for today's forecast, the wind is predicted to have a lowest of 0 and a highest of 11 miles per hour, from 0 till 11. And the integer between 0 to 11 miles per hour. Round I, parentheses, plus. All right, so the lowest value that I need is going to be 0. You guys know that round I is going to give you as a possible number as the lowest is going to be 1. So instead of adding, I'm going to be subtracting. So the lowest possible value out of this operation is 0. The highest possible value, we need 11. So it's going to be 11 plus 1. The highest possible value in here is always going to be 12 minus 1, 11. So it seems that I'm in business. Running and testing my program, we can see that the random generated value was 82 degrees Fahrenheit, the random generated humidity is 80, and the random generated wind speed is 2 miles per hour. All of these three parameters are within the range that we specify, and it sounds that we ended up having, or that we ended up feeling a temperature of 88.8 degrees Fahrenheit.